Hello everyone, my name is
Anna,
Julia,
Linda,
Marieva,
Magdalena,
Lazar.
and we are DYouth.
Are you high? Are you low? Hang on there, you aren't alone. Here we come, here we go, the youth around the globe.
DYouth welcomes you to the new episode of the Diabetes Daily Podcast. Enjoy! Welcome. Please tell me something about yourself.
Hello, my name is Cameron Keekern. I'm 29 years old and I am from Ireland. I've had type 1 diabetes for around about 13 years now. I was diagnosed in 2011 when I was 16 years old. I started off on pen therapy, both NovaRapid and Lantus, and was very fortunate over the last number of years to switch to insulin pump therapy, first of all with Medtronic pumps, and then most recently to the Control IQ Tandem T-Slim and Dexcom G6 combination insulin pump therapy, which has revolutionized my diabetes management and has made things for me anyways much easier. I'm currently finishing off my PhD in medicine, where I am looking at stem cell therapeutics for Parkinson's disease. And I've been involved in the diabetes advocacy activism space for maybe just over 10 years, both as a patient researcher on projects looking to improve healthcare for young people with type 1 diabetes, as well as other projects around kind of supporting and empowering the voice of young people in diabetes advocacy, both in Ireland and also across Europe with the International Diabetes Federation of Europe.
How was your diagnosis? How do you feel about it now, and how far did this change?
So I was diagnosed when I was 16 years old, so I think for me quite an awkward age to be diagnosed at. Particularly in Ireland, the healthcare system where I was from classified me as an adult at 16, so I went straight into an adult system that really wasn't designed for young people in general, but particularly not young people with type 1 diabetes. I suppose at the time I felt very afraid and unsure about what type 1 diabetes meant. I remember the only question that I asked of the doctors was this type of diabetes I had to take an injection for, and being kind of very apprehensive or unsure of what my future would look like when the doctor said, yes, it is, and this is for life. I think, at that time you're struggling with being a teenager as well as, now managing a potentially, life-changing chronic illness. So there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of firsts as well with that, and a lot of things that have to change in a way that maybe you weren't anticipating at 16 years old. I was going back to sit my high school exams. I was planning on where I was going to go to college or what I was going to do, what type of jobs were going to be available to me now. Also, whilst having kind of this eye on the future of what my health would look like and what diabetes meant for the rest of what I wanted to do. Whether that be in sports or in academia or in jobs or in just going out with friends and things I wanted to do, like other normal teenagers at that age. And I suppose over the years, I've had diabetes over 10 years now. A lot of how I felt then about my diagnosis has changed to date. I think I was very shy and kind of wanted to hide the diagnosis a little bit when I first had it. And over the last number of years being involved with lots of different projects and meeting lots of other really amazing, inspiring people with diabetes, it's definitely something that I feel really confident about now, really comfortable about now, and something that I think, there's lots of ups and downs with diabetes, but it's something that I'm really proud to say that I have, and that I manage to the best of my ability, with some days better than others, but that it's not something that's going to prevent me doing anything that I want in my life. It's not something that has to limit what I do or what I don't do, where I go, where I travel, what jobs I may want to pursue, or what sports I want to do. So I think I definitely see it as less of a barrier now than I did when I was 16. It was definitely this immovable force that I feel over the last 10 years maybe I've been able to move that slightly in the direction that I would like it to be, and something that really, I suppose, has given me the opportunity to do things in life that I don't think I ever would have been able to do if it wasn't for this diagnosis.
What scared you the most at first with your diabetes?
I think the thing that scared me the most when I was first diagnosed with diabetes was, well, I suppose two things. The kind of unknown, so what it meant to have diabetes, what that meant had to change, who that meant I was becoming. But also, I think there was a lot of isolation and loneliness. I came from quite a rural space with no real, youth groups or support groups for folks with type 1 diabetes or other types of diabetes. And so I didn't know anyone. My parents didn't know anyone. My friends and people that were my age in my school all thought that I had, eaten too much sugar or done something to, develop diabetes. And so there was a lot of stuff around how I was perceived and maybe what people thought about my diabetes more than what I thought about my diabetes that I think scared me a lot in the beginning in how I was going to manage that and how I was going to have those conversations, and it kind of felt like I always had to defend myself around why diabetes wasn't my fault and why I didn't do anything to get this illness. And having those conversations, I think, really changed maybe how I felt about myself, and I think that was scary for any 16-year-old, but particularly in the context of having no one really else I could talk to about what that meant and how maybe I could navigate that. And then I think as well that unknown in terms of, I didn't know anything really about diabetes when I was diagnosed. I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know what technology or therapies were available or who to turn to ask any questions I had. So it kind of felt like this kind of like black hole of a lack of information and isolation. And I think that was particularly hard at 16 and I suppose maybe changed how those first few initial years of my diagnosis was, maybe more than it could have been if I had had access to, other people who understood what I was going through or information that helped me to navigate what it meant to be a 16-year-old with type 1 diabetes.
What barriers do you feel diabetes has created in your life?
Yeah, I think barriers in the context of diabetes is always a tricky one to talk about, because I prefer often to speak about the things that diabetes has allowed me to do, like traveling, meet some incredible people, do things in my life that maybe I never thought I would be able to have done previously, and have some really life-changing conversations about how we can change this diabetes fear for young people after us. But I think it is important to acknowledge that it hasn't always been like that, and there's definitely been times where it's felt like diabetes has put a barrier in place of what I wanted to do. I think, in the beginning that from a very young age, I've always been really sports mad. Sports has been one of the most important things to not only my physical health, but also my mental health. If I'm having a bad day, going to the gym or going for a run or going fencing, it's one of the things that really helps me reset my mindset. And I think when I was diagnosed, a lot of that changed. Sport became this unfamiliar and fearful space where I was constantly thinking about other things other than the sport that maybe I was involved in. Like, was my blood sugar going to go low? Was my blood sugar going to go high? What was it at? Will they give me time to test? Do I need to take an insulin shot? Do I need to stop? Is my performance down to where my blood sugar is at? Or what should I do? And all these extra decisions made sport seem way less fun, way less enjoyable, and took away that ability it had to reset my mindset for me, in terms of having a space where I was nothing but just me in that space to do sports. And I think, over the years I've navigated that, and sports has become that safe haven again. But I think that's definitely something I struggled with as a teenager and into my early 20s growing up, in terms of finding my space again in the sporting world, and what that what that looked like now, and what that meant, and how that had changed from maybe what I had originally envisaged. I suppose, as well, as someone from a more rural background, there wasn't a huge amount of education around what I should or shouldn't be doing, and I say that kind of with a pinch of salt, in terms of not what I should and shouldn't be doing, but ways to support myself and ways to avoid diabetes burnout and ways to not maybe be so hard on myself. I think I was my biggest barrier when it came to diabetes healthcare, because I was setting often unrealistic goals or spaces I want to be in, and not meeting those or not achieving those, and then feeling like I wasn't very good at it, or that I was the worst diabetic of everyone, and ending up in these continuous cycles of I should be doing better, not doing better, and then feeling down or beating myself up about it. So I think that was definitely, and I think that's not a barrier that we talk about often in the diabetes space, in terms of how we hold ourselves to different standards, and how that can be, well, first of all, really cruel to ourselves, but also really hard to manage and really hard to navigate when, we're trying our best, and, some days things will work and some days things won't work. But I definitely spent a lot of years kind of setting myself really unachievable goals and targets, and ending up in that cycle of beating myself up about not reaching them. And that's something I think I've learned over the last number of years, particularly getting into spaces where I've been able to meet other young people with diabetes, and the way that they've navigated their lives and the things that they've done, and how refreshing they have been in my life has been really important to reset that narrative and reset that frame of mind for me, that every day I wake up and I do my best, and that's what I have to keep focusing on.
Do you have a moment or history of your diabetes that you would like to share?
I think I've told the story a few times to some different people, but I think particularly for a diabetes podcast, it's important that I share how maybe I got involved in advocacy and activism around diabetes healthcare, and in particular for young people with type 1 diabetes in Ireland, but more broader than that, just diabetes and young people. And I'd love to be able to say that I have this really cool story of how I got really inspired and, reached out and wanted to take and tackle on some activism. But the reality is that when I came to college, when I was 18, a poster went up on Facebook looking for 18 to 24-year-olds with type 1 diabetes in the city that I was studying in, to join what was then called kind of just a focus group, I suppose, of young people with type 1 diabetes. And I'd seen the poster and I was a little bit too shy, and I didn't think that my knowledge or my experience was good enough or important enough or valuable enough to share. So I kind of was shying away from it. And my mother called me and said that, if nothing else, she thought it would be good for me to finally meet someone else with diabetes that was around my age, and that maybe I could at least find one person that was kind of maybe going through some of the same stuff that I was, or had similar experiences to me, that maybe could answer some questions I had, or even just be someone on the other end of a phone if I needed someone for a talk or some advice or some chats or some conversations. And, I couldn't really argue with her and say that her thinking was wrong. So I decided that I would take that step forward, and I would go to this meeting, and I would see if that was true, if I would find someone there that had a similar lived experience to me, and maybe that's what I would get out of it. And so I did. I went to the meeting, and I met one of the most amazing groups of young people with type 1 diabetes, and some phenomenal clinicians and researchers. And for the first time ever in that room, I felt like, my voice was needed, my voice was wanted, and that as someone with diabetes, that I belonged in that space. And that's what started the last 10, 11 years of my journey with diabetes advocacy and activism, and trying to create a space where it felt more inclusive to all types of folks, for their voices to be heard in the conversation around what diabetes healthcare and management and life should look like, and what supports might need to be put in place to help us achieve that. And I think that for me, when I think back on that story, I think that's important, because I think sometimes we look at advocates and activists and we say, oh, they're the most super confident person, and they've really put themselves out there to be in this space. But in reality, you taking one really small step could start that journey off for you in a way that maybe you'd never imagined.
What was your personal power secret to keep on and fight?
My reason for staying involved in this space and advocacy and activism, and why I stay on and want to do this, is because I see the impact that it has on younger people coming behind us, that they feel empowered and emboldened to have their voice heard, to be part of conversations, to stand up for better access to technology or education or resources or supports for themselves. And I think I've always thought about why do I stay here, and why do I want to keep contributing to this space. And ultimately I want young people to not feel like I felt when I was first diagnosed, to not feel that lost, isolated, alone, or in a space where maybe they feel like they're the only one that's going through something. And I think that every time I get involved in a project or a conversation or a policy or a camp, that we create spaces where we help people find connection, we help people feel less alone, but we also chip away at changing that journey that lots of young people with diabetes go through, and we change it for the better. And I think that's important to hold on to. I think sometimes when massive change doesn't happen overnight, but we can look back and reflect on the small things that have changed, the ways that things are getting better, even if that's just seeing more young people standing up and being involved. I think that's what always keeps me going on these spaces, and wanting to be involved and empowering other young people to have their voices heard and to be a part of these spaces as well.
What is your dream for the future of diabetes?
My dream for the future of diabetes is twofold. It's first that everyone, no matter what type of diabetes they have, that they have access to all of the information, education, resources and medications that they need in order to take care of their diabetes in a way that best suits them and the things that they want to do in life. Whether that's access to technology, access to insulin, access to educational sessions or trainings, or even access to support spaces. I would like to see, every place in the world have a space where people can come together in a diabetes community, and have other people that have been through things that they have been through and have the same lived experience as them, that they can come together to share that, to give each other some support when needed, but also just have a space where they can come together and not have to think about diabetes for a little bit, not have to think about the different decisions we have to make around blood sugars or treatment or tablets or education, but just to be themselves for even an hour of the week, every week, I think would be really, really incredible. And the second thing is to remove, obviously it's a big goal, but to remove the diabetes stigma that people across the world face in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, that the ignorance that people have around what did you do to get this disease, or you must have eaten too much sweets, or you've done this, to remove that stigma from both our social settings, our hospital and clinician settings, so that medical professionals look at their bias and reduce that, but also within our diabetes community, that we reduce the stigma we have to folks with different types of diabetes. So yeah, I'd really like to see access to insulin and education and technology for everyone, and a reduction in diabetes stigma.
What message would you like to leave? What is your conclusion?
The last thing I would say is, from someone that was diagnosed as a teenager, it seems sometimes that diabetes rules your life and it defines you, and it's one of the first things that people can see or notice about you. And I think my message is to other young people with diabetes to know that you aren't alone with it, that there are people all around the world who are advocating for you, who are creating spaces for you, who want to hear your voice and to empower you to, step into the community, if and how you feel comfortable to do so. But that diabetes doesn't have to be the limiting factor in your life. It doesn't have to be the reason why you don't travel the world. It doesn't have to be the reason why you can't pursue the job that you want to pursue, or pursue the goals or the sports that you want to pursue. Of course, it's an additional challenge, but there's so many of us out there that have overcome and face new challenges every day, and that we're all here to support, guide, and create a space where you feel like you can achieve anything that you want with your life.
Are you high? Are you low? Hang on, there you are until low. Here we come, here we go, the youth around the globe.
DYouth thanks you for receiving this episode of Diabetes Daily. We hope you like it. Thank you for your support. If you feel like sharing your own story, check out our show notes on how you can do so. Until next week, we wish you good blood sugar.